For most of the last century, the career ladder worked the same way in almost every field. You started at the bottom. You did the work, the low-level, time-consuming, often repetitive work. You proved yourself. You got promoted. You moved up. You delegated that same work to the next person who started below you. It was a system of earned seniority. And for decades, it held. That model is quietly breaking. Not because companies change their values, and not because your generation is doing anything wrong. It's breaking because the economics underneath it are shifting in a way that most people haven't fully registered yet. The work that used to make you visible, the work that used to prove you were capable, AI is now doing a significant portion of it. And when the ladder's first rungs disappear, how do you get to the top? That's the question this video is going to answer. This isn't abstract. If you are in your 20s right now, working in a knowledge-based field, law, finance, marketing, consulting, software, media, anything where the output is documents, analysis, or communication, you are operating inside a system that was designed for a world that no longer fully exists. The entry-level role used to do two things simultaneously. It produced output the company needed, and it trained you. You learned by doing the work. The company got cheap labor. You got experience. That was the deal. But if AI can produce a first draft, pull the data, summarize the case files, generate the boilerplate code, the company no longer needs as many humans to do that layer of work. Which means fewer entry points, which means fewer people making it through to the middle, to the senior level, to the leadership layer, where judgment and relationships and strategy live. The people who understand this early won't panic. They'll reposition. And that repositioning starts with understanding exactly what has changed and why. In 2023, Goldman Sachs estimated that roughly 300 million full-time jobs globally were exposed to some degree of AI automation. A McKinsey analysis around the same time suggested that up to 30% of work hours across the U.S. economy could be automated by 2030. But those numbers tend to get quoted to cause alarm, not to explain anything. So let's set them aside for a moment and look at something more specific. Look at what's actually happening in law firms. First-year associates traditionally spent hundreds of hours doing document review, reading contracts, flagging clauses, summarizing deposition transcripts. It was considered essential training. You learned the law by living in the documents. By 2024, multiple large firms had adopted AI tools that compressed that work by 60 to 80%. The documents still get reviewed. But the associate doesn't need to do it anymore. The same pattern is showing up in consulting, in financial analysis, in entry-level marketing roles, in junior engineering positions. The specific tasks differ. But the mechanism is identical in every field. And that mechanism is what actually matters here. Now that you understand the pattern, here's why that matters for how you build a career in it. The old career ladder had a simple internal logic. Output creates visibility. Visibility creates trust. Trust creates delegation. Delegation creates leverage. Leverage creates seniority. That chain still exists. But the first link has been severed. Producing output on its own no longer creates visibility the way it used to. Because when AI can produce similar output faster and cheaper, output becomes a commodity. And commodities don't build careers. So here's the mechanism. 4 steps, in order. Step 1. The compression of execution. The work that used to take days now takes hours. The work that used to take hours now takes minutes. That's not an exaggeration. It's what people using these tools actually report. A first draft that took a junior analyst 2 days can now be roughed out in 40 minutes with the right prompting. What this does to the career ladder is profound. It collapses the distance between junior and senior output. A skilled operator with good AI tools can produce senior-level volume and quality at junior-level experience. Which sounds like good news, and it is, but only if you understand what comes next. Step 2. The visibility problem. Here's where most people get stuck. When output compresses, everyone's output compresses. The person next to you can also produce more, faster. The bar for what counts as impressive rises. If you are competing on volume alone, on how much you can produce, you are in a race you will always eventually lose to a better model. Think of it this way. In a world where everyone has a printing press, owning a printing press is no longer an advantage. The advantage shifts to what you print, and why, and for whom. So the professionals who keep advancing are not the ones who produce the most. They're the ones who have become visible for something other than output. Visible for judgment. Visible for relationships. Visible for the way they make decisions in ambiguous situations, where there is no obvious right answer. Step 3. The leverage shift. Leverage, in a career context, means your impact is larger than your time input. A senior partner at a law firm has leverage because one conversation from them can redirect the work of 12 junior associates. A good engineering manager has leverage because their architectural decision shapes what 40 engineers build for the next 6 months. Old leverage came from seniority earned through volume. New leverage comes from 3 things that AI cannot yet replicate at scale: the ability to frame the right problem in the first place, the ability to navigate organizational politics and human relationships, and the ability to make a judgment call when the stakes are high and the data is ambiguous. These are not soft skills. They are decision-making infrastructure. And they compound over time in a way that technical execution skills increasingly do not. Step 4. The new proof of work. In the old model, you proved your competence by doing the work for long enough. You showed you could handle volume and complexity. That was the test. In the new model, you prove your competence by demonstrating judgment under conditions that are genuinely difficult, not just technically, but organizationally and strategically. The new proof of work is visible decision-making in hard situations. A concrete example: a junior consultant in 2018 spent 6 months doing financial modeling. That was the proof. In 2025, that same modeling takes 2 weeks with AI assistance. So the modeling no longer proves much. What proves capability now is, can you walk into a client room where the stakeholders disagree with each other, synthesize what they actually need rather than what they said they want, and propose a path forward that everyone can commit to? That's the new test. And it happens much earlier in a career than it used to. Step back for a moment and look at the bigger picture, because this system explains something important about who gets left behind. There are 2 people in their late 20s in the same industry right now. Same educational background, similar starting roles. And their careers are quietly diverging in ways neither of them fully understands yet. The first person has optimized for output. They've gotten good at using AI tools to produce faster. Their throughput is impressive. Their manager notices they can handle a lot of work. They keep getting more work. They are very busy. They are not building leverage. They are building a job. The second person understood, early, that execution was becoming a commodity. So, they did something counterintuitive. They let the tools handle the execution and started deliberately inserting themselves into problems that required judgment. They raised their hand for the ambiguous projects, the ones where there was no clear template. They spent time understanding the organizational context around their work, not just the technical work itself. They started developing a perspective that was recognizably theirs. In 3 years, the first person will be good at their job. The second person will be trusted with decisions. The distance between those 2 outcomes is hard to see in the early stages, but the mechanism creating it is running constantly in the background. You don't get to the senior level by outproducing the person next to you anymore. You get there by becoming the person the room turns to when the situation doesn't have an obvious answer. Every task you are given at work lives on a spectrum. On one end, execution, the work where the method is known, the output is definable, and the process can be replicated. On the other end, judgment, the work where the situation is genuinely ambiguous, where reasonable people could disagree on what to do, where context and relationships and values are as relevant as technical knowledge. AI is moving aggressively through the execution end of that spectrum. it will keep moving. The judgment end is where human value is concentrating. The practical question is not, should I use AI or not? Of course you should. The question is, once AI compresses the execution portion of my work, what am I doing with the time it frees up? Am I filling it with more execution? Or am I deliberately pushing into the judgment layer, the ambiguous problems, the conversations that require human presence, the decisions that actually shape direction? The people who use AI to produce more output are outsourcing their runway without realizing it. The people who use AI to free up bandwidth for higher stakes judgment work are compounding their career capital at a rate the first group will find very difficult to match in 5 years. The mental model is simple. AI handles execution so you can afford to be human at the judgment layer. That is not a luxury. That is the new career strategy. So, the question we started with, when the ladder's first rungs disappear, how do you get to the top? The answer is that you stop treating the ladder as a ladder and start treating it as a network of credibility. Credibility that comes not from time served or output produced, but from the quality of your judgment in visible, difficult situations. The old model rewarded patience and volume. The new model rewards early positioning at the judgment layer, even when you're junior. That requires a different kind of intentionality about how you spend the time that AI frees up. The career ladder isn't gone. It's been restructured. And the people who understand the new structure are moving through it at a pace that would have been unusual in any previous era. The new career ladder is not climbed by doing more. It's climbed by becoming the person who decides what gets done. Now, there's a question underneath everything we just covered that we haven't touched yet. If judgment is the new currency, and if judgment is a skill, not a personality trait, how do you actually build it deliberately? Is it learnable on the job, or does it require something different entirely? That's the next video.